Hello guys, this is going to be a video hopefully helping you guys on building your gaming PCs if you're wanting to build one. First I'm going to show you guys the build that I currently have through Newegg. So let's see. Alright, Newegg. This is basically my favorite website when it comes to buying anything tech related or anything like that. So pretty much the PC that I put together, it consists of the CPU is a Core i5 3450. The GPU is an HD 7050. It's not this specific model. The specific 7050 I have is a HIS model, but it's this one right here. The RAM is your simplistic. It's nothing too extravagant. It's a G.Skill value series. 1333 megahertz of 8 gigabytes of RAM. That RAM has been pretty much. It's been doing its job ever since. I tried overclocking it to 1600 and it'll boot to Windows and then instantly just blue screen or freeze up or something like that. So I read somewhere that someone was able to overclock that RAM, but it's not overclocking friendly for me. So all right, next, the hard drive is your simple. I got a simple 500 gigabyte Seagate from Amazon for 40 bucks because I was just trying to just get the computer up and running. This Friday I'm gonna get another 500 gigabyte hard drive, and also I'm gonna get a SSD, possibly the OCZ Agility 4 SSD for my boot drive, and probably some games. Next up, the case is a Cooler Master, half 912. I'm gonna show you guys how that looks. It's a really good budget case because it allows a lot of airflow and it's a very small case. So this is pretty much how it looks. Next up, what did I forget? Oh yeah, the power supply. Simple Antec VP 450. I think that's what it was. The reason why I went with this is because it has really good reviews, as you can see here. For my specific setup, I did not need a lot of wattage. The HD 7050 runs on the 28 nanometer process, meaning that it takes very little power to get the job done, and at the same time, it's a very powerful card, especially once you overclock this thing. It can approach GTX 580 or HD 7950 levels. I'll probably make another video of that, showing you guys how to overclock a graphics card, specifically the HD 7850, because the performance boost that you get from overclocking is very significant, and it really heightens the bang for buck ratio with that card in particular. I did have some worries about getting this power supply because people were saying that the HD 7050, even AMD itself says it, 500 watt is the bare minimum power supply that you want to use for that. But the thing is, I think they're basing it off of a 500 watt power supply that doesn't really deliver 500 watts continuously. It probably delivers around this 450 or even less. But the thing is, this specific power supply, as you can see right here, it delivers a continuous power of 450 watts. So it won't drop below that, and it has the potential to actually deliver more, but it's not going to be something that you can rely on. And also through the test benches, I've seen various reviews on that HD 7850, and the total system power wattage usage, even with way more powerful processors that the one I have, it doesn't really even go above 350 watts. Even though I know theoretically that is like really around the 80% load and it's not really good to have a high load on the power supply, but this is a very reliable power supply. I read the review on this. They've did a 99% load. They've done overload, and the 99% load, the power delivery was still within passing spec, and in the overload, the power supply basically just turned itself off, which is a very good sign because most other cheap power supplies would have just blown up and took your whole computer with it. So yeah, the build that I pretty much have it's a really good fine line between the budget build and a hardcore game machine. So my build pretty much falls in between that. It's more on the lines of having value as opposed to having just raw power. So I'm able to run pretty much every game that's out now on the max detail settings at above 30 frames per second. even though I don't really play on the max detail settings. If I really haven't run into a game that really pretty much has me averaging 30 frames per second, because usually even Crisis 2 or Battlefield 3 on Ultra, I get around, the minimum is about 38, 40 frames per second in the most heated battles, and they pretty much average around I'll say about 45 frames per second. But usually I don't really see much of a difference when it comes to the ultra and the extreme or high presets. So sometimes I even tone down and bring them down to a step down, because even with something that's like, it's a very minuscule decrease in terms of going from ultra to the next step down in terms of the visual appearance that I see on the screen, but the actual frames per that frame, pretty much the frame rate and the frames per second, they're very significantly increased. The main things are anti-aliasing, where in 1080p screens you don't really need that much anti-aliasing. I think about 2 to 4x is good, or sometimes you can even turn it off, and that really gives you a nice FPS boost. Also, some of the, I think is the ambient occlusion lighting. It does give you a better, more realistic lighting, but the frames per second demand that technology puts in your graphics card is really, really ridiculous. But I do keep it on in games like Dirt and even in Battlefield 3. But I put everything else on high with the texture on Ultra and stuff like that, just to balance it out, and I get a very steady 58 average frames per second. And the game really doesn't look that much different, or I don't really even see much of a difference between running it on those settings as opposed to everything on Ultra. It may look a bit smoother because the anti-aliasing is turned up to the max, but I can deal with a little bit of jagged edges for a way bigger frames per second boost. Um, what else can I really cover here? So pretty much I've just described the build that I have. I'm just gonna summarize it and say it over again. The CPU is a, let me just type it in as well. CPU is a Core i5 3450 model, not a 3570K. I don't know why this automatically did that. It's a 3450. I have this overclocked to actually it's not really overclocked. I just heightened the turbo boost multiplier up to 3.9 gigahertz. And the way the architecture works in that CPU is the first 2 cores can run up to 3.9 gigahertz. The first 3 cores, well, the third core can go up to 3.8 gigahertz, and then the last core can go up to 3.7. So if all 4 cores are being used, the maximum they can all run at is 3.7 gigahertz, or as fast as the slowest core. So this is the CPU that I got. Really good ratings. Now, the GPU already showed you. The RAM, let me see if this is a G.Skill, 8 gigabyte. And if this was only 40 bucks, yep, this is exactly what I got right here. 40 bucks. So I made sure every component that I bought had good reviews, and the value was really good. So I was getting pretty much a value system. To be honest with you, if I would have seen this, I think I would have bought this instead of these because of just the way they look. And I think these can run at, do they run at, I think they actually run at a slower speed than this. Actually, they do run at a slower speed, so forget that. And this is the same speed as these up here, which is what I have. And then I swear I've seen a 1600. Like, oh, this is a really good clock. All right, let me get out of that. What haven't I? Oh yeah, I forgot the motherboard, guys. How did I forget the bare bone, the skeleton of the system? All right, the motherboard that I got was a BioStar TC77. So it's a Z77 chipset, the XE3 model. This is the motherboard that I got right here, and the price I got for this was $109.99. Not $199, $109 or $110 shipped. This, I've seen this price fluctuate all over the place. Just 2 days ago, this was $119.99. Now it's back to this price. This was $140 a while ago. So the price for this really fluctuates, and the mail-in rebate, I think, is the reason why it's fluctuating. But this is a really good motherboard. It has pretty much all of the modern-day connectivity ports and connections that I can possibly even need. It can support up to 3-way crossfire or tri-fire or SLI. And the way it works is if you're running in crossfire, they both have 8x bandwidth capacities. So basically, and they run in 3.0. This is a PCI 3.0 port. So basically, a PCI 3.0 port in AX is equivalent to a PCI 2.0 port in 16x. I believe that's roughly the same thing. So if I'm running, if I'm running the third way, if I get a third graphics card and it's running in 4x, this pretty much means that it's running at because 16x is the full bandwidth potential. So it's running at half the bandwidth potential when you crossfire, for those who don't know, and then 4x is running at a quarter. So if I'm running at 4x, basically, with the PCI 3.0, it's basically about to be the equivalent of 8x on the PCI 2.0. So 8x on the PCI 2.0 is what you get with the crossfire, basically. So I won't really see much of a bandwidth capacity hit where the graphics card are delivering more data than the bandwidth of the ports can handle. So even though I won't really even be running 3 cards, I'm pretty sure I am going to be running 2 cards in the near future, 2 7850s, but I don't see me running 3 cards. And obviously I'm going to have to upgrade my power supply to like a 650 watt if I'm going to upgrade to a crossfire setup. So this motherboard can also support up to 32 gigabytes of RAM, and I think it can overclock the RAM up to 2400 megahertz on the RAM chips, which is ridiculously fast. So yeah, it has a USB 3.0 header right here, 2 USB 2.0 headers. It pretty much has your ports that the high-end motherboards have, but obviously it has less of it to bring down the cost. This is a future-proof motherboard because it supports the Ivy Bridge processor. It supports USB 3.0, obviously. What else have I forgotten on this? Yeah, it's not really much. Let me show you the I/O. The only thing I didn't really like is that this doesn't have Toslink optical out audio, so I can't really send it straight to my Turtle Beaches. I have to use the stereo out, but it's not really much that big of a deal. And it has a fair amount of USB ports. I have no devices as of now that utilizes USB 3.0's potential, so I don't really care that it only has 2 as opposed to the more higher end boards that has 4, and some even having 8, all of them just being USB 3s, and then you have some more. It's just a ridiculous amount of USB ports. You have VGA, and you have DVI, you have HDMI, even though I don't use any of these video outputs because I have a dedicated graphics card, which is like right here, and which has its own share of video outputs. So yeah, that's been pretty much it. I'm just gonna post the specs of my computer again in the description so you guys can get a rough idea. And this is for if you want to buy exactly what I gotten. You can obviously alter some of the components to get a better one. The graphics card I got was HD 7850. It's a very, very good mid to high range graphics card. If you want to get a better gaming performer than mine's, and then you can get a more, for the same price pretty much that I build my computer, you can get a more lower end CPU. So as a result, you're going to have more money left over to then put to the graphics card and get a more high end graphics card. An i3 processor won't really bottleneck the higher end graphic cards if they're running by themselves. It's until you crossfire them that the i3 may start to show some significant frame rate droppage as opposed to a more capable CPU. The reason why I got I got the Core i5 CPU was simply because I actually use this computer as a workstation, like video editing and other stuff like that, where the CPU's performance actually matters. So that's why I kind of went with a more balanced approach as opposed to a more lopsided approach where you get a lower end CPU and a very high end graphics card. So this has pretty much been a video showcasing the specs that I have for my computer and what you can buy to get a similar performing computer as mine. If you have any questions, feel free to ask in the questions or comment box or whatever. Thanks for watching this video, guys. Later.